Welcome to the Talk Doesn't Cook Rice podcast with myself, John Staskowski, and Danny Massaro, where we explore thought-provoking concepts and provide practical insights to enrich modern life. We hope you enjoy this episode.
This is something. This is nothing. This is solid. This is space. Between yourself and the world of nature outside you.
Right, Danny. Hope could be a bit of a broad topic, this one. We've got a few threads that we want to pull on, but this was really instigated, motivated by Adam Curtis's latest documentary. So we've done one of our first episodes, I think we did on this podcast, was The Century of the Self, which was one of probably Adam Curtis's most famous documentary when he did about Freud and the influence of that since the 1920s. And he's just brought a new one out called Shifty. And so I think you sent me at first, didn't you? Like that he'd got a new one out, and I was like, I didn't know he got one out. So I was straight on there, watched the first couple. So I think I maybe started watching it before you and then texted you, I'm tapping out now. I'm done. It's just too negative for me. It was that classic Adam Curtis imagery of loads of BBC archive footage, and him basically putting a narrative together around essentially how British society going back to the 70s has, I suppose, just got more fragmented, more uncertain, a bit pessimistic, a bit melancholic. And he's just sort of, I suppose, trying to paint a picture of the national mood, as it were. And I just found it just a bit sapping. It just sapped the energy out of the room, where it's like, oh God, there wasn't a voiceover, so it was just imagery and then like different random videos that he does in his usual style. And it was just, for me, it was just a bit negative. So I was like, nah, I'm not doing this. I'm tapping out. He's gone. And I think you were a bit more positive, weren't you, when you went into it? But that just inspired this, having a bit of a chat about hope. So Adam Curtis is kind of painting this image or this picture that the future just looks a bit scary and we don't really have a positive vision for the future and what that might look like. And I think you can do that when you go back and you start putting up footage of Thatcher and, oh, she did this and then that happened and that meant that this was a thing. And you can put that agenda together. But I was like to you, like, I grew up in the 80s. I think the 80s was great. Like, I look back and think there's loads of positive stuff there that he could have equally as put on and formed a narrative on, which he didn't. So that just got us talking over text, didn't it? And like, maybe this could be a good episode on hope and actually maybe trying to paint more of a positive vision for the future, and that everything isn't shit and negative and we should be all pessimistic and just kind of moaning about stuff and that kind of thing. So hopefully trying to add a bit of a positive vision on hope. So give us your little intro on how you see it and why we're here with this as a focus. And then we'll dive into some pretty random areas, I think.
Well, I think when it was entertainment, what he did, again, for me, it was like, he had a narrative of the politicians used to have power, then they went for capitalism, gave all that power up, and capitalism took over and basically money runs everything. So the politicians have no power left and therefore can't even come up with a decent vision of the future because even if they had, they've no power to make it happen and control. Partly because we're very, very individualistic. So it was a little bit negative, but the big thing that come out of it when I listened to him on a podcast after as well was essentially saying what you've just said. Nobody has any more a positive vision of the future. And I thought, wow, like that obviously is his big axe that he was grinding. And he said the news is terrible. It's hysterical news. It's like every single day there's like high level incidents that would get you like, oh my God, obviously environmental issues, global peace, humanitarian stuff, financial things that aren't right. It's like everything is, in the news and all sorts. And I think we can all relate to that. So the future's a little bit scary. AI, that's another thing people are, like, oh my God, we're all going to lose jobs and so on. And it got me thinking about, is it actually true that most people are going around where they don't think that the future's a good place or they haven't got ideas of where they want to go, because we know he's biased and we know he has an agenda and so on, like fine, that's cool, we get that. And yeah, so that's why I mentioned that to you when you said, yeah, well, you've been doing some work around hope, why hope And having a positive vision of the future, what you might call a compelling future, is really important. And I understand that particularly in sports psychology. I also understand that from that syntropy episode that we did last time, that it's very useful to think that we're heading towards beauty and more order, rather than just everything's entropic, getting away from crap. Where it's very important to almost visualize a future that you moving towards. So that sent me back into some Heidegger and Camus. So that's something we could talk about today. And you did some stuff about, you wrote a good article with Ernst Bloch, didn't you? What he said about the future and having hope and what hope really is. So
there was a bit of a synchronicity, wasn't there? Which I think is often part of syntropy. You will notice more synchronicities, so little coincidences and things that just kind of seem to line up. So I'd been writing a little piece on Ernst Bloch. He's a German philosopher and kind of a bit of an existentialist, really, but he's known as more of a Marxist in the mid 1900s. And he literally had a philosophy of hope. And I'd had that in a draft for ages. And then Stephen West, who does the Philosophize This podcast, released an episode on that. And I thought, that's interesting. So I just finished it up and sent it on. So he's an interesting voice, I think. But when you said that Curtis says no one has a positive vision, that's where I was like, well, I think I do. I think you do. I think we're generally, and optimism's slightly different, which we'll get to, but I think we're generally quite optimistic, glass half full. We're sort of moving forward with an idea that things are going to get better and life's good and it's going to keep being that way, hopefully. And I'm known often for people will roll their eyes sometimes because one of my sort of catchphrases, I think it's not that I see as that, but people tend to remember it, is I'm always like, there's never been a better time to be alive than now. I genuinely don't think there has. In human history, there's never been a better time to be alive than now. And I'm always saying, when people are like, come on, there's never been a better time to be alive. And they just sort of roll their eyes. But when has there? I think I was saying to you, we're living better than royalty were 100 years ago now. You and me, just two working class lads from the north of England, we've got a better standard of life than royalty would have not that long ago, just with basic stuff that we have now in society. So I genuinely think it's a positive time to be alive. And yeah, if you get on the news and if you watch too much Adam Curtis, and I think you can get pulled down towards this more entropic, things are just getting worse, this is shit, that's this is that, have you seen this happen now and that's happening? And I'm always like, look out the window. Honestly, look out your own window. Is that what the world's like? And I just don't think it is. The picture that we're painted now, and I know that's a bit, obviously, like we always say, people can be in dire circumstances. Someone who's in Gaza now probably ain't thinking this is the best time to be alive ever, this is brilliant, or Ukraine or whatever. So there's always going to be things, but generally for the likes of us and the people we knock around with, I think it has never been a better time to be alive. So one of the things that Curtis, I think, pulls on a bit, which we've been talking about quite a lot lately as well, is technology, isn't it? And the influence of that. And I've done it myself, where you kind of take the piss out of the younger generations a bit and go, look at them with the phones and that, and so there's the Heidegger thrownness part there that we'll get into. But even that, I've been negative about phones in the past and the negative influence of smartphones and social media and all that. But even now, I'm kind of coming around going, when I look at it now, that's the greatest invention in my lifetime, the smartphone and that whole internet. Well, for someone like me who likes learning and doing what I'm into, and it's just there's never been a better. How amazing is that? Imagine Nietzsche or Heidegger or the people we talk about having access to all human knowledge and history in their hand. They'd be like, what? That's amazing. Stuff like that. Yeah, it has negative aspects, but generally, if you've got a good mindset with it, even that you can flip to a positive rather than this constant bashing life and technology and this is crap and that's crap. And it's come on. It's just how you're using it. If you're just going to use it to sit on Candy Crush and, I don't know, look at whatever, just doom scrolling on Twitter or whatever, it's not going to be great. But if you use it with a positive mindset of, oh God, look at what I can do with this. I can get that and I can set this up. And I basically run a business off a phone pretty much. 80% of it, really.
Yes.
How good's that with people all around the world? That's wild to think you can do that. That's surely a good thing. So I think technology plays into it, and I definitely think Curtis is a bit, like he was saying about AI, wasn't he? Like you mentioned, that's the doom and gloom around AI and all this. It's going to be Terminator 2 and all that. And it's is it? Or is it just another amazing tool if you use it right? It can be. So I'm much more that when it comes to, and maybe that we've talked about personality before. Maybe there is like a personality aspect to it around. Some people are just more optimistic than others, aren't they? And probably I'll be like a broken record a bit later on as well. I do think there's a massive energy component to it as well. So I think to be hopeful and be positive and be syntropic and have a really like positive vision of the future, I do think you need good biological energy to do that. I think if you're low energy, you probably are just like, this is shit, this is rubbish. There's no, like, what am I meant to do? I'm stuck. I've got no options. I'm no hope. I think that's tied in, which we'll probably get to. And I know I'll bring that into everything, but that's just because I think it's fundamental to life. So do you want to jump starting with a bit of Heidegger then? Because I think I do see the links there. And
yeah, well, Martin Heidegger, he talked about human beings. If we remember our Dasein episode, he called human beings Daseins, which is basically the big aspect of that is that a human can't be separate from time. So like time in a weird way isn't like a timeline. Time lives in a human. It's ever present. So you're thrown into the world. You just like landed in here and you've got a historicity given to you straight away. You've got great-grandparents, a lineage, a culture, parents, you know, all your family around you. So straight away, you have a history. The moment you're born, you have a lineage and a history. So you know you have a past, you know, obviously when you get conscious enough to know what to memorize and so on. And then equally, obviously, you always have a present and you always have a future. You're always aiming and becoming. So in a way, you're a becoming thing, unlike a dog who isn't really conscious of that. Humans become conscious of that. And he said that's the very fundamental nature of what a human being is that people forget. They are intertwined with time. They are a being and they are time, hence his most famous book, Being and Time. So humans are time. It's like, what's going on here? You know. So, but that means that the future isn't just a place that you haven't got to yet. The future, in a way, exists in the now with you because it's constantly on your mind, as does the past. People talk about that with, you know, memories and traumas and things are always living in your body and so on, and they break it in different ways. But this was Heidegger's thing. He says, and if you try and sort of say, no, humans are more like empty computers where you just input fresh information all the time, he says, you're wrong, because humans aren't like that. He said, what comes with that is this, you're always in your situation, and therefore, mentally, you have this feeling that you must become something all the time in your future to pay off the debt of your past, of your historicity. So you want to make good of your chance, if you know what I mean, and that you always have a choice. You always have a choice to be, because you can think and choose as a Dasein. You can think and choose. Regardless of your actual situation, there's always options. As Viktor Frankl said, you know, even in the Nazi death camps and so on, you always have a choice. So most people kind of agree with that, especially the existentialists. You know, but most people would agree, you know, whether positive psychologists or whatever, they'll always say, come on, like, what are you going to do? So that causes responsibility. You have this, your future is responsibility in a way, whereas your past, you feel an indebtedness. Now, where it all mixes in, that if you get your future going well and your future is exciting, which is, that lives in the now. So if you're looking forward to things, and you've got something on this weekend, or you think life's good, or you visualize a positive future, or you think something good's going to happen, you feel that in the now, right? So the how you relate with your future is in the now, and if that then actually happens, then it rewrites your history. So it's a little bit like, oh, I've made really good of myself, so I've paid off all my family, like basically for giving birth and looking after me when I was young. But if the future's gloomy and there is nothing in the future, and your relationship with your future is just a state of what Heidegger called waiting for something to happen good, rather than the future being where you always think about your future as a moment of vision, what he called more authentic living, that you wake up one day, or you have these moments where you authentically go, I need to create my future. I need to look at my future in a positive light, hope, optimism, action, goals, you know, these types of things. Then if I keep like excited, if I get excited and I'm motivated and I have energy and drive, and that feeling, that is a very, very important place to be as Dasein. Now, what he said about Dasein, with human again, we know we are going to die, but we often, inauthentically, in our everydayness, we don't want to think about that. We think we're going to live forever as we live the days. But Heidegger proposed that no, it's very important that we face up to that authentically and admit that we are actually mortals. And we're the only species that know that. So that's why he said, that's why he invented the new word, Dasein, to try and think of it that way. So we are the only species that know that is our future, and we know we will die because we're mortal. So it's a big thing. It's even with Leo now, who's 3.5, coming up to 4. You're like, oh, I wonder when he's going to realize that about death. It's a big moment, isn't it? It's like, oh,
maybe he's going to listen to this and be like, what?
Yeah, he's not listening to this. Yeah, not many people understand this at the best of times. So he's gonna, so you think, oh gosh, that moment, and it really sinks in. It's a bit of a pivotal, strange thing for the psyche and the human, but eventually,
Can you remember that? I don't have a memory of the first moment I realised that. Obviously, I suppose maybe when like a pet dies or like a relative or whatever, it front and centre. But I can't remember having a moment of, oh my god, like hang on.
Yeah, I don't really know. I don't. I remember probably off some movies and things, isn't it? Slowly creeps up and you realise maybe, Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe or something. Maybe they killed Aslan and what's happened to him? What does that mean? And you just ask, don't you? But anyway, I think that the point is that he said that, and you see this with people who, when people get ill or when they're faced with death or have near-death experiences, or sometimes people might jump off a building or something to get that thrill of nearly dying, it sort of like wakes them up. You hear people who've sometimes had diagnoses and they say, like, it was depressing, but equally, I also started to appreciate every single moment. Everything looked amazing. The world became beautiful. And in a way, that's authentically thinking, well, I've got 6 months to live, or I've got this much left. And although that sounds depressing, it's like, well, let's enjoy every moment, live this like my last day. And so the question Heidegger would often say was, if you knew that this was the last day you were going to live, how would you live and what choices would you make? That would be being more authentic about what you truly want with your existence. And in a way, that forces you to be optimistic, because it's more of a forward-looking, going out and getting it thing. No matter what your circumstances, it's, well, this is what I genuinely want, which is good for me. It's more time with my family, more time sunbathing or listening to music, watching films, whatever it is, reading more philosophy, going to the Grand Canyon, whatever it is, it makes you wake up. But he equally said that being authentic all the time isn't possible, nor should it be, because you're living like everydayness. We're often inauthentic, in terms of we just do things every day. We get caught in the everyday and the blandness of life and so on. And yeah, so what Heidegger was sort of saying was, don't expect to be constantly hopeful. Don't expect to be constantly on this sort of enlightened, massively positive, the future's amazing. But equally, don't get stuck in the drudge of inauthentic living where you have this really strange background feeling that you're not fulfilling, that you're not fulfilled and things. Like get busy sort of like identifying and waking up to being hopeful. And he called that resoluteness. That was his term for being resolute. He said resolution, in a way, I'm a little bit paraphrasing and maybe a bit wrong, but in a way, resolution is hope. Resolution is having moments of vision and being resolute and tough. You know what they call resilience nowadays. So say it's a squash player, a sportsman, they've just lost Arsenal, all the players, we lost again. I can't believe it, been beat off. It's like, well, are we going to sulk about, are we going to look at the down bits, or are we going to like genuinely go, this is definitely our season? And when you keep getting knocked down and life's really, really tough, it's hard to be resolute. In other words, it's hard to be hopeful, because you can obviously go nihilistic. And that is interesting for me, and that's where Camus comes in a little bit, between what he called, like, in a way, what we might call being overly hopeful, naively hopeful, and realistically hopeful, what he called infinite and finite hope, which we can talk about in a second, I suppose.
And that's where, I've even done it myself with people that I work with. That's where Heidegger, some of his only ever life advice, wasn't it, was spend more time in graveyards. when he was
Yes.
asked. So like that's part of that anticipatory resoluteness. I know I'm going to die, and rather than just like, oh yeah, but not yet. Not yet. I know I'm going to die. I'm not daft, but not yet. And Heidegger's like, you might walk out your front door and a comet could smash into Earth and then you're done. It could come at any moment. That's part of where the anxiety comes from in a way. It's like we don't know when. We know we're not stupid, but we don't know when. And we like to think, yeah, when I'm like 90, not now. But it could just come, and that's why he's like, yeah, spend more time in graveyards, like walk around and look at the headstones and recognise that'll be you one day.
Yeah, really good example from yesterday just comes to mind. The tennis player, the Italian player Fognini, who hasn't won a match for 8 months anywhere, nearly beat the world number one on grass, who hasn't lost for 2 years on grass. And why? Because he realized it was his last ever Wimbledon match. And he said, I walked out and I was just like, all or nothing, like last match, go for it. And you do hear that saying of people, don't they? Play it like it's your last match ever. And so there's a philosophical and psychological thing behind that. And it's very tricky to do that when you know it's not actually your last match. For some people that could tighten them up, but it's just that's just an example. If you sometimes, I remember Jordan Peterson saying something as well that was interesting, that he worked out that he was only probably going to see his dad 8 more times. So he was like, he got upset like he always does, but he said, so it made him appreciate that when he sees him, to give him his absolute full attention, which is what Ian McGilchrist says is the definition of love in many ways, isn't it? Or somebody quoted someone, to give someone your full attention is love. So it was like, whoa, that's another one where, and I think people do have regrets when they don't get to have that last conversation, or they do get to say what they really wanted to say or what was really important. And again, that's Heidegger sort of intimating that that's a bit of a pressure that we all have. But like, wake up and like live to that a bit quicker. Live as if things are going to end in a way, and it will make you live more with more hope. You will start to possibly notice the things you do have rather than the things you don't have. And even in other people and societies, like you've done with the phone, you start to go, well, I know the phone's not the best, but the things it does give me are this. The things that person who's not perfect, that friend I have who's always pissing me off or whatever, but they've got 3 things that I absolutely love about them. Don't wait for the eulogy at the funeral to kind of then go, oh, they were actually pretty good. Like somehow get onto that before that happens. And again, that's so all this what we're talking about is potential futures and potential things that might happen. But as Heidegger said, which I love, he says that's in your presence. That's in the present. That's not this future space that you're going in. It's with you all the time, because obviously you only ever actually live in the present moment, but your future is in that present moment.
I know somewhat. Didn't know them personally, but I know people who knew them. Who was on that plane that went down in India fairly recently. And obviously that's like I was saying, like you don't know when it's going to come. That's just like the most unexpected thing ever. Like you've gone away somewhere, you're flying home, and then boom, like the plane crashes and you're done. And you could see that the people who I saw who were leaving messages, like just totally like in shock, but like you've never heard so much lovely comments about a person. Like obviously they worked with them and like knew them, and it's just like they couldn't believe that what had happened, and they're just like, and I was just reading it thinking, hundreds of people this is. Like, I wonder how many of them ever said that to them when they were there and like they knew. You just wouldn't. It's not part of that everydayness, is it? To go, oh, by the way, Danny, just so you know, like I think you're amazing at this, and the way you do that's like unbelievable. Like I really appreciate you for that. You just don't do it, do you? And it's always when it kind of, I mean, people, but as a rule, and it's only ever, I do wonder, I was speaking to someone the other day about, I think it was that stimulated the discussion. Like, it's just classic, isn't it? When someone gets like a terminal diagnosis or something out of the blue.
Yeah.
And like you said, they just totally flip that whole, they might have lived for decades and just like overnight, bang, just changes. But is it just built into us? Is that part of the weirdness of being human until that actually happens for real, and it's a real thing? You can't actually genuinely live that way because it's just part of like the weird quirks of how we are. Like I think we're generally quite good at that, if I'm honest. Like, but are we still like? Would we still live like we do now if we had 6 months to live? Probably wouldn't, would we?
No, I think I think that's where Camus for me comes in with a good angle on hope. He sort of said there's this infinite hope and finite hope, whereas infinite hope, what he said was it negates the absurd. So it's more of a like a whole sort of what will be attitude, fate, and almost God and faith. No matter what, God will look after us, and that's my hope. Que sera, all that, like put your faith, put your hope in this bigger thing that's looking after us, and Spirit and Elijah, or whatever it happens to be, and so on. He thought that living existentially, actually being a human living, he thought that's what he thought was philosophical suicide, because he believed more in a finite hope, which was basically like a hope that included absurd things can still happen, like your plane can still go down, and yeah, that makes you scared. Your country can still be bombed or whatever. You can still absolutely at any moment, frightening things and uncontrollable things can take you over. And it was like, he called it earthly happenings, right? Like not things that you don't, and so obviously he'd been born in Algeria in a war, so it was obviously very realism. So he said, yeah, you can be hopeful, but don't be infinitely hopeful. He was saying, obviously people are fine for them, but he preferred this sort of finite hope, which relates always to your predicament. So if you've got a situation where the facts are looking pretty much like, what you was hopeful for ain't going to happen. It's like, get real a bit. Hope goes so far. And also the flip side of hope is doubt. So there must be doubt in the first place to have hope. So doubt and hope work together really like this sort of rocking thing. So then he sort of said, and having doubts isn't always a bad thing either, because doubts can, get you to, various other things and action and so on. So he didn't believe in just this like almost passive, infinite hope that everything's great. But Camus obviously was like that, wasn't he? He was an absurdist, and he'd had a lot of things happen to him, and ironically died in a car crash.
I think he got a lot of that. Because he liked Kierkegaard, who in many ways was like the original existentialist, really. A lot of them were built, even Heidegger as well. Like Heidegger's whole anxiety and things, that comes from Kierkegaard. But Kierkegaard's whole thing was a leap of faith, wasn't it? That was the infinite. Like, you've got to believe, you can't just believe in what's here on earth and like this everyday just routine of life. You've got to expand to the infinite, the universe, and that much bigger cosmological picture. And that's where Camus was like, nah, I think that's philosophical suicide. But
yeah, that's it.
A horse you've got to back in it. Do you go down for Kierkegaard, that was the only way you can be authentic.
And I think talking about hope as a topic, even for me today, and we're talking about it, it's like, why not just come on and just, you don't want to be optimistically, naively hopeful about everything. People have got, real things going on. So it's like hope within parameters. It's like Frankl said, you couldn't get more degraded as a human in the camps, the Nazi camps, and you were gone on every level. But some people found snippets of tiny little bits of hope. And the front cover of his book, isn't it, Man's Search for Meaning, is a bird on barbed wire of the. It's a picture. It's a very symbolic picture.
I remember that a bit. I probably mentioned it when we did that. Did we do an episode on Frankl?
We did Sunny Nihilism, didn't we? But I'm not sure.
That part of that. But I've been to Auschwitz, and that's one of the things I vividly remember. You're walking around. It was like 30 degrees, beautiful, not a cloud in the sky, sunny. Like, you could have been in the countryside, like just having a nice walk around the countryside, birds flitting in and out. And I remember vividly thinking, I can't imagine that when you're in here, like back then, and the birds could just flit over the fence, land on a tree, and then just shoot back out again.
Yeah.
And you're here, like, it must have been like, I don't know, is juxtaposition the right word, of like just ultimate brutality? And then like, because even when you see a bird now, it's like a nice thing to say, I like nature, isn't it?
Yeah.
But then just flipped off, just totally free. That's like, I just remember thinking, God, that must have done your head in. Like, you're that close to freedom, but you can never do it like that.
And that's the finite hope. That's getting kind of real. That's being realistic now. So it isn't about, right, hope. The biggest force in, such a courageous act, constantly be hopeful. Hope's important, and so on. So there's these different levels of it.
That's where Ernst Bloch, who was talking, I think that's where he has a good distinction. So what you just described there, I think that's more optimism. He defines optimism as that is just believing that things will get better.
Right.
So the future will get better. I'm optimistic, glass half full. But for him, it's quite a passive thing. It's like a passive mindset of like, I think things will be better. better. It'll be all right. It'll be better next year. Don't worry. But it's like, that's passive unless you're actually doing something about it. So hope for him requires like imagination and courage and action. So he actually calls it militant optimism. And he's like, hope and optimism aren't the same thing. Like, they're like militant optimism, what he calls hope, is like, that's like you got to get your hands dirty, and you can't just passively sit there and be optimistic. It's like, no, you've got a future vision that you think can be. He calls it the not yet. It's like, yeah, the not yet is like, but there's a vision that we're going to get to one day, but you can't, it's not just going to come to you. You've got to put some work and effort into it. And I suppose it's like, it's a refusal to accept this is the only possible reality. So I know you're saying, Camus, that it's grounded in reality and this is it, and it's just fact. This is the way it is. I'm in a prison cell. That's it. I can't get out. I think Ernst Bloch would be, but part of hope would be that this isn't it. This isn't the only reality that can be. Something can happen, and you have to turn your attention towards that. Now, Ernst Bloch was, like I said, he was a bit of a Marxist, so a lot of his stuff was more like communal, really.
Yeah.
So I don't know. We could get together and our families and friends would go, right, let's start a food bank, or let's go and help that neighbour who can't do the gardening anymore, clean up the garden and do some gardening for them. That's like a collective action, and that for him was hopeful. It's hope of a better future and a communal coming together to do it. Now, this piece I've been writing, it's a brutal experiment, but it's one of my favourite experiments. It often comes up in the repeats for you around energy and learned helplessness, because I think that's a big part of hope. It's to even envision a future. Is a lot of people that are in this kind of learned helpless state of like, I can't do anything. The world acts on me rather than me getting out there. And this guy, Kurt Richter, who was a psychologist, did a lot of experiments in the 1950s with rats. And it's always blown my mind. And whenever I tell people it, they're just like, what? So I'll always say to them, basically, he puts them in these glass jars, these rats, full of water. And they're quite tall and thin, so you can basically tread water in them, swim on the spot, but you can't. Basically, there's no way of getting out. You can't like climb up onto something or whatever. So he put them in there, and his whole intention is pretty brutal. It's like, I wonder how long they'll swim in a hopeless situation where they can't get out. There's no way for them to get out. How long will they go for? On average, it was 15 minutes that they would last. So they'd swim on the spot for 15 minutes roughly, and then eventually they'd just succumb to the exhaustion and just drown. And his next step from that was like, right, same thing, put them in, let them swim. Just as they get into that 15-minute point before they're about to drown, he'd pull them out, dry them off a bit, just let them get their breath back, and then put them back in. And I always say to people, how long do you reckon they went for? Now, I think don't you? You know the actual...
Well, I read your piece on it, yeah.
So, but I'm sure we've mentioned it before. So most people will be like, half an hour, 40 minutes. Like, so it's a bit of a thing. And it always blows people's mind when I tell them the average, the second time was 60 hours. So they've gone from being able to survive for 15 minutes to 60 hours. There's one rat that does over 80 hours of just swimming on the spot. And Richter's whole explanation was that basically because they'd been rescued that one time, they have hope in their mind that if I keep persevering, I'll be saved. So if I just keep swimming, I'll get saved again, and help is coming. But obviously it requires them to keep swimming. They can't just kind of optimistically think it'll be better. You've got to put the effort in. And I just think that's like it's a bit of a jump in it to go, well, let's just apply that to human life. Just keep swimming. But it's kind of not in a way either. It's like, it's sort of a life or death thing. It's just like, yeah, you've got to keep swimming. You've got to keep thinking the future is going to get better and I can work towards it.
Is that why Rocky Balboa won in Rocky IV when he cut Drago? Didn't he? He bleeds.
We were saying earlier, weren't we? All of those hero stories, it's sort of that. They always end up in the pits of doom, don't they? Of like, oh my God, this is a hopeless situation now.
Yeah.
And they always find a way. Like, you know, when you're watching, they're going to get out of it. You know, the A-Team and MacGyver, it's like...
Movies take you to the most doubtful bits. And even watching it, you think, oh, they have this. I know they always get out of it, but this is the one. And then... And they do, and you go, hey!
But even in your mind as you're watching, you have hope, don't you, for that? You're like, you're not obviously, maybe it is more of the optimism, but you're hoping they're going to get out of it somehow through some sort of ingenuity or brute strength or whatever.
I've seen players in squash matches, and they're playing a match and they're okay, and then they get to a point and they're like, Yeah, it's impossible usually from here. I always lose. They always score in the last 5 minutes or in, whatever, or they never get tired. And I remember that with Laura once, with Nicole David. She was so fit, so dominant, the world number one. And it never really occurred to me that you'd never perceived that she gets tired. She's just always battered everybody. You thought, well, she's just a machine. She's just this fit Malaysian girl, never gets tired. And you just started to almost give her superpowers. Thought she couldn't possibly ever get tired. There was just one time Laura played her and she was doing these different things. And Laura was just like, oh my God, she's tired. And then she'd played her 20 times. Or oh my, like, I can't believe it. And it was and from that point on, Laura's head to head was better. And it was almost like just like the rats. It was like, it's easy to believe something until something actually happens, isn't it? I think that's where you persevere and chip away. I think it was, there was a theory on it that I remembered from back in the day that I did it. It came in Sports Psych, but just looking this week, researching this, there's a guy called Cinders, C.R. Cinders, and it was 2002. And this was more psychology than philosophy, a bit like what you've just been doing there with the rat psych. And he wrote a book called Rainbows in the Mind, which reminded me of Tony Robbins's and moon shots, when he does all these things around aim for the moon, moon optimism, the old thing of Kennedy saying if we go to the moon, it gives everybody hope. If we can do that, we can do all these little things and an inspiration and so on. So hope, in Cinders' view, he believed that hope is active in promoting agency in the self and therefore allows optimism, thus fueling determination to go towards goals. And it's a driving force. You get this state change in your body, this energy state change and feeling how you perceive it. And then, right, bang, let's drive towards it. And then actually the militant optimism, the actions, shall we call it, happen because of the original fire was this vision, this hope. And that lines up very much with compelling futures and doing things like dream boards and visual boards and visualizations and all these things that are part of psychology. So in a way, he said that hope is a rallying cry to the self, which was I thought, yeah, I suppose learning them things and having them things, it's like at moments where you've solved situations, and you do feel down and you do feel stuck and you are in your everyday, and sometimes you don't feel like the best and you lose again, or something crap happens again, and you do feel like, what's the point? And you do get that little bit of puffed out, tired, fatigue. Oh, I get that a lot with working with players, and sometimes you're scared to build them up because you think, oh, they're going to drop again. Yeah, I sometimes think I don't want to build them up too much in their hopes because it's the hope that kills you. That's a famous saying, isn't it? It's the hope that kills you. So you've got to be a bit careful how much you build people's hopes up without the requisite action and belief. But what I liked about Cinders' theory, he was very much like, hope's fine being inspired from the outside and having things, but he really starts to become this internal thing, this internal determination that isn't blind faith. It's not like ridiculously silly, stupid over optimism and like, I can fly and jumping out of a building, I will fly and dropping down. It's just this rallying cry to keep going, and therefore said it was like back to a virtue of courage. He said, so to be hopeful is courageous, and that even back to the Greeks, that's what they viewed hope. Hope was always viewed as an attribute of courage, but some philosophers have argued it's both. It's weakness and courage. It depends how you use it. But I like that. I like that hope is a driving force for change. But as Curtis, getting back to Curtis in the beginning, he probably agree that he says, but okay, so why are the politicians not giving us that vision? Why are the newsreaders not giving us that? Why they're not readers, the news people? Why is the media not providing us with vision? Elon Musk did for a bit, didn't he? Elon Musk was someone who said, right, we're going to Mars and building ships. We're all going to have electric cars, and generally the future could be this. At least there was an idea. I think the Buddha, great, Gandhi, people who start movements. Trump, for some people, gives them hope that we can become this. So I think it's very powerful socially, but on an individual level, I think it's like, it's very much not being naive, but promoting your own agency to get up, roll your sleeves up, do a few things. But that's so much easier to do if you have this vision in your mind that it can actually happen. That's the leap of faith part, isn't it?
But that's where I think a lot of the most vocal people you hear today about all these current, whatever the current thing is, and there's always something new, isn't there, like to bang your drum about. How many of them actually do anything about it? So they give it beans on social media and like they talk the talk, but it's like you don't even speak to your neighbours. Like, you know,
Yes.
if there was a bit of litter outside your own house, you wouldn't pick it up. It's that kind of a thing of like, that's, I think, Bloch again, it's like, there's got to be action to it. Like, that was Gandhi, wasn't it? Be the change you want to see. It's like, well,
Yes.
come on, like, if you get 10 people together, you can get some serious shit done.
Yeah.
In terms of like actually cleaning up a street or whatever, or like you can get a lot done. If that starts rippling out, then you've got a movement behind it. But everyone just sits there kind of criticizing other, like the politicians. Like, I think that maybe partly puts me off with the Curtis stuff now. Like, I'm just past caring about politics and politicians, like as if they're going to I'll affect my own life, like in the direction. I'm not going to rely on someone a 300 mile away in London, hoping that they're going to do something. That's like almost naive hope, innit?
Yeah.
You just got to get out within reason if you can, and everyone's limited in maybe physically and stuff, perhaps in different things. But yeah, you just got to get out there and do it. I was thinking when you're on about the squash example, I thought of a good one that would wind you up. And probably a lot of people who might listen to this. Greatest example ever in sport, half-time, Liverpool in Istanbul.
Yeah.
3-0 down, been absolutely battered. In a final, some of the fans were leaving even, weren't they?
Yeah.
And that I thought of that embodied sense of, you probably never watched it that often, that you switch it off if it comes on. But remember when Gerrard got that first goal and he's giving it like into the crowd, and like, come on. You can, even if you watch that back now, probably more as a Liverpool fan, but you get that embodied sense of like, oh, come on, like maybe there's something on here. Like, and then it just builds, doesn't it? And that momentum. And then if you hear the Milan players interviewed that day, they're just like, I've never seen anything like it on a football pitch. I just don't know what was happening. It just the hope just rolled over them, didn't it? It's not optimism in that. It's like, you've got to actually get a grip of that and actually do it. Like, put the ball in the net.
Yeah.
It's like an active thing, but it's embodied. You even like watching it, you get that, all right, come on, like we're on it. You can imagine the crowd in the stand, that energy and momentum starts going, and suddenly that future's there. And you're just like, right, come on, let's just get it. It's there.
Yeah. But it's so easy to go the other way, isn't it?
Well, you could have just, what's the point? I'll just go to the pub, turn a tea, if I waste of time, away to go. Just give up. The players could have easily done that, couldn't they?
Yeah.
It's like, it's just one of them days we got battered, is what it is. Whereas it's like, no, we're not having this. Like, we can still win it. And there's loads, and there's loads of luck and random, like, sport's absurd, isn't it? There's loads of random stuff that goes into it. But generally, as a thing, it's like, come on.
I think overall, to summarise it, it can enable action, hope, can't it? And enable that response. Or it can also enable avoidance by just wishy-washy, it'll be fine, it'll work out. I'll be right. It'll be okay. Oh, just a little bit of a tweak, and I'll change my whole season. By one. The classic is football fans, isn't it? Oh, we've had 2 signings this summer. We're going to have the best season ever. It's like, but you can't blame them for a new season feeling and a new manager. And
well, the classic is New Year's Eve, isn't it? That's when it's
New Year's Eve.
New Year's resolution. Let's go. This is it. That's quite hopeful in a way. And it's like, right, I'm going to join the gym. I'm going to do that. And there's a little bit, but then it soon seems to wear off, doesn't it? And they just get back in that everydayness of Heidegger, of like the old habits, the old routines.
Yeah.
That feels nice and cozy and comfortable. And before you know it, it's summer again, and they're wondering why they put 2 stone on.
Yeah.
Instead of like losing.
Yeah, so it's overall, it's not something you would say to someone, you need to be more hopeful, because it's kind of how you use hope, isn't it? And if it does become something that's getting you going, and it's making you, whether it's the infinite hope that Heidegger, that Camus didn't like you're hopeful in God, you're hopeful in the universe, energy, syntropy, you're hopeful.
Yeah, I don't mind that. I'm not so much the religion of Kierkegaard well, he was pretty anti-Christianity and stuff, but in terms of syntropy, like we mentioned, that's infinite in a way. That is the infinite. It's like a bigger force that's pulling you from the future. That's not grounded in your the reality here and now.
Yeah, it's like you believe in the light, not the dark, isn't it? The old Star Wars thing, isn't it? It's like, ultimately I'm on the side of the light, and I'll always be someone who does that. But what I also like why it's tricky, this one, is because if you've experienced endless dark, to go up to someone and say, oh, just be hopeful, that isn't your business, is it? To sort of profess that. So it's such a personal thing. It's such an existential thing. As Heidegger said, Dasein exists always in its situations. It's always situated in the current situation that includes its past and it includes its future. So, if you've been ground down and you're ill and your system's shot at and you've bad news after bad news and reality is absurdly just unlucky and things have gone bad and whatever. Hope is a different kind of thing to that person than someone who's always had generally okay things. Every time they've hoped, okay, a few knockbacks, but lots of good things have happened. I think it's then easy to go, yeah, you got to be hopeful. You've got to be hopeful in the world.
Yeah, I'm not saying like either of us are saying that, but there's even, like you mentioned, Frankel, even in the most dire of circumstances,
yeah,
there is always something that you can, even if it's a tiny little move towards something, there's always something you can do. Unless you're dead, basically.
Yeah.
There's always something that you can just try and shift towards. And obviously, yeah, if you're in it in the moment, sometimes it's like helping, not just telling me, it's showing them something, like actually like helping them do it. And once it's like, oh, actually, yeah, like, and the momentum can grow again, can't it? But yeah, I'm not saying we need to be going around saying, oh, well, just come on, just chin up, just be hopeful.
Yeah, we loved the show that we started to talk about, didn't we? That represents this thing I'm saying and we're saying now. What was it called?
True Detective.
True Detective, yeah.
The greatest single series.
You love that. Want to quickly explain that, like what happens between those two main police officers, like partners?
If people haven't seen it, remember we did an episode on Mr. In Between, didn't we? And I remember saying it's the 4th best show of all time. I still stand by it, I think it is. But True Detective is the greatest single series of a show of all time, I think. They made more series after it, but it's a different cast and they kind of ruined it a bit. But the original one is Matthew McConaughey and Woody Harrelson playing two detectives. And it's pretty grim, the subject matter. It's like a serial killer, basically, through time, isn't it? And they're trying to solve these murders. And you kind of see them go on their own journey in their lives and their marriages and stuff. And without wanting to plot spoil it too much for anyone, Rustin Cole, played by McGonaghy, his daughter dies, doesn't she, when she's quite young, so he's obviously quite affected by that and it influences him a lot. So he's the most pessimistic, miserable, quite nihilistic character in history, isn't he? Like there's a lot of deep philosophy in it actually as a show, and there's these car journeys which are quite funny really, where they're just getting to know each other as colleagues, and he's kind of telling him, like, Woody Harrelson's asking him, he's like, well, I believe this, and he's just proper dark, pessimistic, almost antinatalist in a way. It's like anti-human. It's like what's the point of even living? We should just stop breeding and just, like, he says, like, just go off into the sunset and agree to not do it anymore.
Yeah.
So it's proper, like, you can't get really any lower, can you? And then by the end of the show, after they go through all of this carnage, he flips the opposite way, he says, doesn't he? Like, he comes out of the hospital, doesn't he? And he's like looking up and he's like, there's loads of light and dark but I think the light's winning. Because
he nearly died, there's all that in there, and he thinks, I wanted to stay alive. Why? And he goes, actually, the light must be winning.
Yeah.
No.
And there's obviously, I think in the show, the part of what they're saying is that he kind of, which people criticised it for, he kind of has a come to Jesus moment, doesn't he? And he finds God, and it's like, oh, yeah, for God's sake. But you don't necessarily have to watch it like that. He just kind of gets more hopeful, and he says, no, there is actually stuff worth living for. It's good to be alive, and the future can be better. And that's someone who's been in the darkest of places possible as a human. So it's like, that's genius TV. That I usually watch it once a year. I think you've just rewatched it recently. I'm probably due my yearly rewatch.
The last three, I thought they just were rolling, and I thought, and it was weird. We were talking about it. Obviously, I see it, and I thought that exactly fits. You've got this character who's hopeless and hates humanity and just thinks it's so nihilistic and wish the planet would be better if humans didn't exist.
Yeah.
Like, fact. And Woody Harrelson's playing his usual bubbly, like, Joker guy who's like going, what is this new partner I've got going on about? And they sort of meet in the middle, don't they? Because they go to some terrible jobs, in terms of cracking the child stuff and that. And it's unbelievable. And they meet in the middle, and then and Woody Harrelson has a real shit goes on with his family, doesn't it, and his wife, and I think he gets busted cheating or something, so he's in the pits, and the negative one ends up having to cheer him up.
Well, he's the one who's still trying to solve the case. Woody's given up. He's like, and he's like, no, come on, I've still got.
Yeah, come on, we've all right. I know I've said humans shouldn't exist, but we've got a job to do. Like, so it's, well, I love it because real life, you know, we talk on these podcasts as if we're like, you know, a bit detached from it, but you know, that showed the art of that. Real life actually grabs your philosophies and your ideas, and it reveals the real truths. And sometimes you're just spinning your head and theoretical and moaning, but when you're in a real, that's Heidegger again. When Dasein's always in its situation, and it's that context of its situation that really ultimately drives much of the philosophy. But yet, the philosophy or believing in hope and these things can actually come in and rescue you and consolidate you and drive you to a different place. But there are extremes that just take you, like joy, you know, just an unbelievably joyful moment. You can kiss your enemy, you know, or absolute disaster moments. You can fall out with your best friend, you know, so, you know, emotions and states, that comes into it as well in terms of hope. But yeah, it's great. Just as a general thing, and with everything Curtis said, I know this has been a big mishmash of a topic, but it's just, I think in my work, to finish, I see it as my role a bit as a, you know, a psychologist or a coach, a mental skills coach, not just to give actual mental skills to navigate life, but to offer people at all levels, when they've had big upsetting losses, when they're out for 2 years with injuries that can't get fixed, when they've been beaten by a rival 10 times on the trot and so on. It's always important to pitch the hope at the right level. There has to be, yeah, I get it, I know where you're at, but there is a bit of sunshine on its way. There has to be, because otherwise, what is the point? And if that means like having some gratitude or looking around and noticing what's good still, and you have to go back and do a bit of different work, or even hope for a bit of luck, or hope for something absurd, keep hanging in there, keep showing up. It could flip, it could go well. And it's not about making false promises and, you know, being a fortune teller, and this is definitely going to work, guaranteed, trust me, you know, fortune favors the brave, all good things come to those who wait. It's not those slogans. It's more just like, come on, let the light, let the still, it's still worth it. It still could be good. It's, you know, and I would like to see more of that in the news and just in general conversations with people and people who have personalities, who can see the light and the dark every day, you know, and they come in and they're bubbly one day and a bit down the next, but then they're up again, rather than just this like, no, everything's this or everything's that. You were quite right on picking up on Curtis being quite but for me it led to it's led to this.
Yeah, no, it's still, like you say, I'm still a big fan of what he does. I really like it. I just think maybe he could all that stuff he talked about in the 80s, you kind of look and go, well, I should be a disaster then. Like, I should hate my life.
Yeah, true.
What Thatcher did in the late 70s and 80s, where it's like, again, Heidegger's historicity, well, it didn't, yeah, it's a fact of my life, but it didn't hold me back. I still kind of transcended it in a way. Like Sartre used to say, it's just like you make of it what you can. Final thing for me, I do think energy is still vital. I think it is way, way, way easier. In fact, I think it would be the default state to be hopeful when you have abundant biological energy. So if your metabolism is churning out loads of ATP and you've got energy to burn, I think that's the default state in nature, essentially, that life is good. And that's part of that bigger syntropic vision. And without wanting to just randomly throw in another name, someone else we've talked about and I've written about previously, Alfred North Whitehead, and his notion of like life as a process of becoming rather than being, in a way. It's like you're always becoming and life is a process. So he had a process philosophy. So you're never finished, you're never static, you're always in the process of becoming something else. And that just goes back to that entropy-syntropy seesaw. It's like, what are you becoming? Are you becoming more incoherent, like less complex, more chaotic, more broken down? Or are you becoming more coherent, stronger, you're growing, you're getting more creative, all that kind of stuff. That's that thing. So I just think that's a really nice lens to look through. You're never done. Like, there's always a bit of hope up somewhere you never finished until you're on the slab in the morgue or whatever, and you're literally done. There's always a hopeful process of becoming going on. And I just think energy underpins that whole cycle, which is a bigger topic. But
yeah, and just that energy one then. So, so there is also a psychology component, isn't there? Because like the rats, that was purely psychological, wasn't it? It didn't feed us on glucose and things. That was just a psychological difference. With the rats.
So there obviously, there must be in terms of like, you're kind of into the whole mind-body dualism and substance, like is whole, like, there's almost like is it like ethereal? Is it just like a mindset, a psychological thing, or is there like a physical thing?
Yes.
That's a whole other world we could get into that.
Right, yeah. So basically we're embodied. And so the psychology and the physiology are interlinked.
Big time. But like you mentioned the politicians earlier, surely our politicians, if they actually gave a shit and they genuinely cared about people, they need to be like the people, the fellow with the rat. They need to basically show us that like there is like pull us out the water and dry us off and give us a rest.
Yeah.
It's still, life's never going to be easy in that way, but they don't, do they? They just keep saying, yeah, you're going to drown. Life's shit, innit? You're going to drown. Like, no point even swimming. You may as well just give up now. I don't see any positive vision in that way. That's like a genuine syntropic. Like back at like cartoons when we were kids, you'd have like the Jetsons and stuff. How good did the future look? Like, it was always paid, but now it's just, you get this AI, we're all going to be basically be in the pods in the Matrix with AI basically using us as batteries or something. It's just like dark.
Just the last one then. Does that mean that like charismatic leaders, that right or wrong, whether you agree with them or not, when they provide a solution, even might be an old solution, like close the borders, do this, or we're going to build a future city, we're going to be the greatest, like Trump, we're all American, we're brilliant, let's get back to that. And I think for some people that does change their energy and physiologies just by listening to him, because he's at least providing a vision, even though it's an old vision.
And they rarely deliver on it, do they? Like, I think, I don't know if it's genuine, how they try to provide hope, or they just try to use marketing and psychology to get you to vote for him. That's where the rubber meets the road, doesn't it? But
yeah,
I genuinely do think there's a biological component to having a sense of hope, that maybe it makes your metabolism work more efficiently or something, or squeeze out. Like, there seems to be an embodied physical aspect, biological aspect, not just in your head, to having a vision that's worth living for and working toward.
Yeah.
Whereas if you feel hopeless, it's like your biology just gives up almost. It's like, well, what's the point? The world's so hopeless.
A physical decline as well.
Yeah, it kind of, your biology just doesn't see any future. It just gives up. It's like, well, this environment we're in here is so inhospitable to life. We're done.
You think that links to burnout in athletes and things, perhaps, where they just can't, and then you're extra tired, lose. They say, there's nothing better than winning, like Klopp and that. You say winning keeps you going, whereas losing just finishes you off early.
It's that sort of entropic spiral again, isn't it? Of negativity and breakdown. And
yeah, the best form of recovery is winning.
Yeah,
because your system's feeling great and you sleep better and all that stuff.
But it doesn't need to be on that level. Just like we said about the birds earlier, just it's mental how much difference just going for a nice walk can make. Simple as that. Doesn't cost you anything even. But just getting out in nature, especially this time of year when it's light and it's sunny normally, it's like, that puts a bit of spring in your step, doesn't it? Of like, you see a bit of, life's not so bad actually. Like, it's quite, but if you don't, like I say, that militant optimism, unless you do that, you can't just sit in your house and just be, it'll be better next year. Come on, it'll be better. And just sit there and wait for it. You've got to act within your means that you have, whatever that is. But even with the worst means, there is still something you can do.
Moments of vision, that's Heidegger, yeah. You have to have moments of vision. You can't just wait.
And when that moment of vision comes, make sure you act on it. And it doesn't have to be a massive life change. It could just be a small little thing, can't it? Do you know what? I'm going to give Danny a bell. Just like, if I'll ring Danny, that conversation leads to something, and then suddenly there's a snowball building of positivity.
He equally said your past changes because you retrieve from your past. You don't just remember it. You don't dwell and sit there going, oh, it was great back then. You actually pluck it out, all your best bits, and you reuse it energetically into the future in terms of like, I'm good at that. I remember this about myself. I'm funny. I have this about me, or I remember when somebody helped me, so I'm going to help them. It's a great feeling. You pluck out, and that's, he says, that's what starts to get you firing, because you feel inside you're paying off your debt, and you're acting on responsibility to improve people around you and yourself. So that's, again, he said that was your authentic bit. You see your past and you retrieve, and you see your future as something you move towards actively because you're in the present with moments of positive vision. He was clever, that fella, wasn't he, Heidegger?
Think energetically, though. When you've got good energy, I think you can change your memories into anything you want in the moment. Even like traumatic, it's just like I can actually use that as a positive thing when I've got the energy.
That's it, retrieving, yeah. My experiences, yeah.
That's what, think of those Liverpool fans in 2005 at half-time in that match. That's as for football fans, just horrendous, isn't it? Oh my God, this is horrific. We've been like, but this is embarrassing, blah, blah, blah. If you'd have asked them in that moment, how's your night going? Oh, horrendous. This is horrific. You ask them now about that, best day ever. It's like, oh, brilliant. What a brilliant game that was. It was class. And it's like, you've just totally changed the memory because of the outcome. But in the moment, that was the worst time ever that you're having. So, like, memory is never that reliable anyway, I don't think. Like, back to, have we talked about Hume? We did, didn't we? That when we talked about the self. All you are in any moment is a bundle of perception. There's no, like, core self running through. You're just you in the moment. So, again, you can flip that to be hopeful.
Yeah. Great.
When we dance, the journey itself is the point. When we play music, you will simply become completely absorbed in sound. And therefore you will find yourself living in an eternal now in which there is no past, and there is no future, and there is no thing called difference between yourself and the world of nature outside you. This is red, this is green, this is something, this is nothing, this is solid, this is space. Between yourself and the world of nature outside you.